This is TWiT.
Okie dokie, I am ready to play the AI-generated theme for the whiskey segment. The theme is called Something from the Closet.
Which is like a horror movie.
Only because it's so good. This is from Suno, S-U-N-O.
For a drum of that old whiskey long on the shelf. Years gone by, it's all the change in myself. Dusty bottle, hidden well, out of sight. Now we'll drink to the memories and toast to the night.
Pretty good, huh?
That's not bad.
Crazy. That's insane.
It wrote the lyrics, too.
From my closet, secrets it's kept, with whispers of nights when nobody slept.
How would a machine know that?
Golden liquid, warm and strong in my hand. Let's raise a glass, let the stories expand. Whiskey in the closet.
So weird. Oh my God.
Spirits of the past in the glass we hold.
All right, that's enough of that. You get the idea. It's crazy.
Listen, when you go on Lilith Tour or whatever it is with this song.
Sorry?
Yeah.
It's like something from Lilith Tour.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I think it sounds pretty like, if I didn't tell you ahead of time, you might think a human wrote it.
Right.
Yeah, it's not, it doesn't trigger the uncanny valley like a lot of the others.
No, I think that's the big difference.
That's what's crazy about it.
Yeah. I wrote another one here. I'll just play it briefly. This is the lyrics that I wrote.
One.
Yeah. It's a little shorter because the lyrics are there's only 5 lines.
What weird stuff did he find today? Is there something in your closet from the Isle of Tolay? Don't
It's the guy from Halloween. He's coming to kill you.
It'll always be whiskey to me.
I think that's pretty good too.
That's pretty funny.
Anyway, Richard Campbell, I'm sorry about that, everybody. You're going to need a good wee dram of something right now to get that taste.
I got a little something.
All right.
I felt like I hadn't talked about Irish in a while. Looking back,
I love Irish whiskey.
Jane, last one was Jameson, which was 4 months ago. So I went to Kilbeggan. Now, Kilbeggan is a town near the center of Ireland. It's in the county of Westmeath on the river Brosna. This is literally in the route between Dublin and Galway on the M6, although there's a little bypass and stuff these days. Old town, nominally created because of St. Beccan, which is considered one of the 12 apostles of Ireland, who founded the monastery there.
That's how you pronounce that, not Bean?
I
would say Bean. It's Beccan?
I'm guessing. I'm not Gaelic.
Pecan?
You're going to fight about it.
Okay, no, I don't think you're guessing. I think it sounds right.
Yeah, and the name Kilbeggan actually comes from the Síl Becan, which is like the Church of Saint Beccan.
Ah, all right.
Which, of course, as churches do, burned down, was lost to time, that sort of thing. There was another monastery built in the same site like 600 years later in the 1100s. Like, I love the time span on this. Although that one stuck around for about 400 years or so, till you have the revolutions in the 1500s, and then the land gets taken from the monastery, granted to a local family called the Lamberts. They dismantle everything. Although, as I was digging into this, I found this geophysical survey where they were using multispectral analysis and found the outlines in the ground of the original monastery and so forth. So while it had been lost for a few hundred years, and it was found again in 2003. But this is actually a story about whiskey. I just told you about the town. And this is a good whiskey area. Just a few kilometers to the south is Tullamore, another great Irish whiskey. And this is a very old whiskey town because this distillery was founded in 1757. So about as old as you get. This is from the McManus family, a gentleman by the name of Matthew McManus who put it together. And apparently in the notes, they used a bunch of the stones from the old monastery as part of the construction for this place. And of course, it's the 1700s, so it's all water powered. So they built it right on the river with a paddle wheel, which, by the way, still exists to this day to power the pumps to operate the distillery. The Locke family, another old family from that area, takes over the distillery in the 1840s. In fact, to this day, if you go to the Kilbeggan Distillery, you will see the name Locke Distillery on the chimneys. So that name, even though it's generally known as Kilbeggan because it's in Kilbeggan, it was the Locke family that ran it for many, many years. And that's also when the Industrial Revolution came. So they put in a steam pump or a steam boiler to run the power plant when the water wasn't available. The Locke family, very respected in the area. And one of the reasons was that John Locke, who in the 1800s was running the distillery, took good care of his people. He built cottages on the site for some of the workers. He would buy coal in massive bulk because he needed it for his boilers. But he also, as part of your compensation package, you're a worker at the Locke Distillery, is he provided your coal for you for your home. And to the point where there is a famous newspaper story from the 1860s where they had an accident that damaged one of the boilers at the Locke Distillery, which Locke couldn't afford to replace. And the town raised the money to replace the boiler.
It's kind of like the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau
that
Field.
kind of thing. And a related story from that same newspaper was that in 1878, there was a big fire at the distillery and the whole town came out to fight the fire, including rolling a lot of the barrels out of the burning buildings to save them, which I also think is a separate motivation.
High priority, yeah.
Save the whiskey. And they became a public company in 1893. The John Locke & Co. Became a publicly traded company. Now, like many distilleries, they had to shut down during World War I when the grain supplies got short, and they were hit hard by U.S. prohibition. Went back, were up and running again with a younger generation of the Locke family in the 1930s after prohibition was over. But Ireland wasn't having a good time then either. Within 20 years or so, things got very tough. And in 1953, they stopped production, continued to sell some barrels, fully shut down in 1957 when they couldn't pay their taxes. But the government never did anything with it. They were kind of raided in the 1960s when Europeans would come in and buy barrels and simply resell the whiskey and make some money there. Until finally the citizens of Kilbeggan rallied in the early 80s. In 1982, they formed the Kilbeggan Preservation and Development Association. And one of their goals was to save the distillery. And so they raised the money to build a museum to distilling, not even trying to restart the distillery per se, but just to preserve the building and not have more bad things happen to it. Until a fellow named John Teeling came along. So Teeling was an entrepreneur in Ireland in the 1980s. He bought up an old potato alcohol distillery in Louth, which is north of Dublin, and created the Cooley Distillery. He started making some good whiskey using column stills. But he was low on space up there. And so he bought Kilbeggan from the town for a bargain in 1988 to use their warehouse. The warehouse was largely empty at this point. All the barrels had been sold off. And so he stored his whiskey in Kilbeggan and over time started using more and more of the facilities of Kilbeggan that were still intact. And so by 2007, coincidentally, the 250th anniversary of Kilbeggan, he starts actually making whiskey in the Kilbeggan site again. Now he did the mashing fermentation steps at Cooley, but then he'd bring down the wort and do distillation in the original 180-year-old stills in Kilbeggan, and then barrel it up and store it in the Kilbeggan warehouses. And so there's a big ceremony that was done for the first firing of those old stills in 2007. And he had representatives, descendants of the McManuses and the Codds and the Locks that had operated the distillery for the past 200 years, although at that point it had been shut down for 50 years. By 2010, Kilbeggan is a fully operating distillery again. They built out their own mashing and fermentation facilities again, most of which have been lost. And in 2011, the Beam Corporation, as in Jim Beam, acquires Cooley, which of course owned Kilbeggan. And then a few years later, Suntory bought Beam, as we know. So now the whole package is owned by Suntory, both Cooley and Kilbeggan. In 2015, immediately following that, Teeling, because you may know the name, took his profits from selling off Cooley and Kilbeggan to Beam and Suntory and created a brand new distillery in Dublin called the Teeling Whiskey Company, which will deserve its own story. Although I would point out that by 2023 had sold it to Bacardi. So John Teeling, man, like building distilleries and selling them. He did a bunch of it. So, and Forsyths, who are the famous Scottish still makers, actually approached Kilbeggan in 2019. They made an exact replica of the 200-year-old copper pot still, so they could preserve the original and continue to produce whiskey in the same style. Which Kilbeggan has a very interesting approach to it. So now the contemporary version of Kilbeggan today uses an oak mash tun, so all wood, also wooden washbacks as well. And then they have those replica stills, a wash still of 3,000 liters and a spirit still of 2,000 liters. But they only do a double distillation. Most Irish whiskey is triple distilled, but Kilbeggan is not, just twice distilled. And then they have this large granite rack house. It's a arched concrete structure with a hard floor. They store their whiskey upright on pallets. I think you got that picture up there, perfectly timed there, Leo. So notice 5 high, which is very tall. So they use forklifts to move this around, which is why they need the concrete floor, and upright barrels. So a little less wood contact. Most of those barrels are used bourbon casks. That's their normal barreling for the variety of their whiskey. They make a few different versions. I'm going to talk about their blended because it's the basic, but they have a small batch rye, which they first started making in 2010, about 30% rye. The rest is both malted and unmalted barley, which is, if you remember our Irish stories, that's a common trick for the Irish, that they don't just use malted barley, because there was a period there where the Irish government would tax malted barley, so they started using unmalted barley. They have a single still edition, which is both malted and unmalted barley, plus 2.5% of oats, because the Irish are crazy. Actually, that's an old school Irish whiskey going back into the 1800s. So they do all these things. And there's a triple cask edition, which is bourbon sherry and virgin oak. That is not what I have here today. So back in 2011, we did a .NET Rocks tour across Ireland, and we stopped in Dublin, and we went up to Belfast, and I got a chance to see the Bushmills, and then we went across to Galway, and on the way we happened to stop at Kilbeggan, and this is the bottle that I bought.
Ooh, that's a pretty, much prettier than the one on the website.
Yeah, this is the old school bottle, and these are largely gone. So this is literally a batch 2 edition, bottled in August of 2011, and it was that fall that we came there. So this was brand new.
Oh, this is an old bottle from the closet,
and the cork has immediately broken on it. That's excellent.
That's a good sign.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
is whiskey like wine? It gets better
really
with age.
That old.
No,
in the bottle.
No, it does not. Okay. You don't normally have air exchange in a whiskey bottle. That's why they do a foil seal on it. And so it is what it is when it gets put in. But you take a look at the color of this. So that's not bad. There's no age declaration on this, which is pretty common. It has to be a minimum of 3 years, which is sort of normal. I know that this distillery reserve is only barley. So again, it was one of the early whiskeys they were making.
At least 16 years old now.
It's been sitting in the bottle that long. For better or worse. It's only a 40%, because they don't really go in for a lot of that stuff. Wow. No, that's so Irish, isn't it? Just no offensive nose, light on the tongue. You're just drinking happy. It doesn't have a big hard hit. It doesn't go out.
God, you make me want to drink. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah, no,
it's like
it's such a definitive Irish drink, like that. And that's why I just pointed you to the blend, because the basic Kilbeggan, the one you can actually get in the US, like this was only made for a couple of years and only at the distillery. And I found it. You can get this at auction now. I found a site that was auctioning off these bottles for about £70, so maybe $85, which is typical of Irish whiskey. They're not super expensive, but the regular blended bottle, which I absolutely rank, $25. And it's a classic Irish whiskey that you probably haven't had. It's a little bit off the beaten path. We've got a bunch of questions in the Discord this time. This is very funny. What's the difference between horizontal and vertical barrel aging? Vertical is the standard, where you lay the barrel on its side in a rack. It increases the surface area of the liquid exposed to the air gap in the wood. Do they have to
rotate the barrel if it's on its side? Is that a thing?
They normally don't.
No. Okay.
And then they thief from and that's also where the bung is. So if you're going to thief from it, you're able to pop the bung and thief from the barrel.
Thus the bunghole.
You can't do that in a vertical placement.
It's a technical term.
Okay.
Does whiskey ever Does whiskey go bad in the bottle? No, not when the bottle's full. But there's been a general conversation these days of when you get to about a half a bottle of whiskey, if you let it sit for too long,
You've put a lot of oxygen in the bottle.
it does start to oxidize.
Yeah.
And so it sort of loses some of its character, which is really a way to say, hey, if you got a half bottle of whiskey,
Drink it.
call some friends.
Yeah.
Knock it out.
I guess you could use a Coravan or something and put nitrogen in there and preserve it. but-
Yeah, you could. It's just very, very vino kind of mindset. But yeah,
He's
that's
like,
kind of-
or
just
drink it.
or you could just drink it. You know?
Here's an idea.
I actually have something that might bring you to drink. I've written a little song
Oh, no.
in,
I knew you were awfully quiet there for
in
a while.
honor of
He was up
old
to something.
Irish Saint Bacon. If you'd like to hear it, it's kind of historically accurate.
hear the
I
fiddle.
believe. Yeah, little Irish fiddle.
Old Irish Saint began in building his church.
This is like something you'd hear in a pub at night in Ireland, you know.
Whilst his hands were employed, he ceased not praying with joy. Old Saint began,
That's
his
crazy.
Lord did please. So they named a whiskey after him, because it brought you to tears. Now it's Kilbeggan, a whiskey for years.
How about that? How about that?
That is crazy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the woman from the chorus. So that's amazing.
Yeah. It's the true story, by the way. That's why he became a saint, because he built his church on his knees, crying the whole time, which honestly, I probably would have done too.
True enough. Well, that's Kilbeggan, and like I said, if you can get any special editions, feel free. The blended is fine.
love
It is
that
a
bottle.
classic Irish whiskey. It's just
They're a little sweeter, right? They're a little.
Yeah, they tend. Well, most Irish whiskeys are triple distilled, so they take a little more of the character out of it. It's just
Yeah.
as an easy drinking,
It's
lighter
easy.
whiskey.
Yeah.
This is a double distill, which makes it unusual for Irish. They tend to age in the bourbon cask when the bourbon imparts a certain amount of sweetness as well. So, yeah,
But no peat.
No, not a thing. Not a thing in Ireland. That's a Scottish thing. You know what the Irish got? Wood.
You need peat.
I was going to say good taste. What do you mean? Yeah.
No, that's kind of like why I like Irish whiskey. There's no risk of smoke.
You
and
kind of can't
invasion.
go wrong. And look, it's rarely my first choice just because it's not as easy to find, right? There's always Jameson and Bushmills. That's going to be on everything.
Yes.
Tullamore,
Yes.
Dew, Teeling, legit.
Is
Redbreast 12,
is
one of my very favorites. I've talked about the green spot and the yellow spot. There's blue spot and red spot as well. Much harder to find. Fabulous whiskeys.
Yeah.
You know, you want
And
to
the
drink.
Clonakilty ain't bad
The
either.
Clonakilty was lovely, but
Yeah.
much harder to find.
Yeah. We do the Redbreast, I think.
Yeah.
My
Redbreast
brother-in-law is a big Irish whiskey.
If you're going to have a nice Irish whiskey, the one that, and plus they have age appellations. People feel good when you pour them a Redbreast 12.
Yeah, they feel good, don't they? Yeah. Right. Oh, you're bringing out the good stuff, eh?
That's it. Well, I only
But
brought out
actually-
the 12, the 18 still in the back of the room.
You turned that Clonakilty or what? No, the Kilgabagahaga.
Yep.
By saving it in your closet for 13, 14 years, you made that an old whiskey.
Saved it. Forgot that it was at the back of the room. Yeah, and it's like, when I was looking at what whiskey to talk about, I'm like, Kilbeggan, that rings a bell. Did I have one of those? And I go digging around.
Are you going to do any more .net Rock tours? That would be fun.
Oh, boy. Last one was 2013.
It's a lot of work.
So
Yeah.
they're a lot of work, 5 shows a week, and I'm, latter half of 50s these days. That's hard on the body.
Yeah, I know. We used to do a lot of stuff like that. In fact, we did, Paul knows this, twice we did 24-hour New Year's marathons.
Yep.
Right. And it was great. Patrick Delahanty, who has a nice Irish name, I think, in the Discord, in the Club Twit on New Year's Eve, played each of the shows, each of the hours. So we actually redid it in our club for New Year's Eve 2024.
We did a long weekend .net Rocks where I think we streamed 16 hours a day, 3 days in a row. And you just
Like a marathon or a telethon.
Drunk, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. Lisa said it was fun for you. It wasn't fun for anybody else. I said, okay, well, then I guess we won't do those anymore.
Well, and we had different guests for each of the hours. So in theory, we were making a whole bunch of shows, and in the end, we had to throw a bunch of them away.
Yeah, because they were too.
And they got stale. They got way too old.
Yeah.